call if you like.
We have quorum, Tom. I think we can just get started, and then if she joins us later and we need to go back, we can.
Okay, Ms. Nair, we are now live.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moya. All right, well, welcome everybody to the October Intergovernmental Legislative Relations Committee meeting. All members are present except for Councilor Lancena, who we expect will be joining us any minute now. We have an agenda, and the first item is a report and update from the city's state legislative liaisons on state legislative interim committees. So why don't we start with Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Nair and councilors and others. So what on a policy, from a policy perspective, a primary focus in the interim, working with different representatives, of late Representative Eli, who is providing information to the LFC on our very important program, the VIP program. It is, of course, a priority for the city of Albuquerque to continue this program and to hopefully lead the way in obtaining funding for the statewide program. It is a fantastic and new and innovative way of doing exactly what it says, which is intervening on violent crimes at a very early stage with the goal of course, crime preventing, specifically violent crime. Jerry Bachicha has been fantastic, along with the new addition to the city team, Libya Naya, who has really been, boy, I'm gonna make a terrible pun here, but a VIP for the VIP. And I know I couldn't help it, but it's true. You know, Representative Eli really held us to task. And when I say us, it's the royal us. It was really Jerry and Libby with respect to detailed information. It's no secret that for good fortune, and bad fortune, I suppose, given the pandemic, the state has a serious amount of cash available for lots of programs, and the Legislative Finance Council and the interim committees and the folks that are preparing themselves for the 30-day session are vetting lots and lots of asks for expenditure of that money. Of course, we all know crime is a top concern for our citizens, and the city is leading the way with the VIP program. There's already been funding through the Department of Health for that, but the city wants to see that spread statewide so that it at least is a step in a positive direction towards new and innovative ways of addressing this shared issue of our citizens. And we answered all with Jerry and Libby's assistance. Representative Eli has assured me that we answered all his questions, the questions that are posed for every program that is seeking funding, be it behavioral health, be it roads, be it infrastructure. Everybody has asked the same questions, and they really rose to the task to talk about what our budget need is, which is really about $10 million. And when you think of boy, I don't know, Joe would probably be able to get it about right, a $7.5 billion budget or better. Doesn't seem like a lot of money, but you know, the Legislative Finance Council and representatives are stewards of the public dollars, and $10 million is still a lot of money. And I think that we have prepared ourselves well going into the session with providing the folks who are going to be having the loudest voice as to how this money is going to be spent for this program. So I think we're in good shape. on that. Chairman Chasey continues to be willing to be a lead on it. She believes in the program, and we're hopeful that we're going to get it across the finish line so that the city can lead the state on this important issue.
Thank you. Any questions?
That's really been that's been the focus. Of course, you know, we'll prepare again to respond to whatever the governor puts on the call. We don't expect a lot of policy because there's going to be a lot of time spent in this 30-day session trying to repair economic damage caused by the pandemic to small businesses and big businesses across the board. But there will be some policy things, and of course, we'll keep our eye on that to the extent it impacts the city.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. Any questions for David? Okay, let's move on to Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hi, everybody. Despite the fact that we're in the middle of an election season, and despite the fact that there's going to be a redistricting special session coming up in December, things are really not partisan as it relates to the legislature. The conflict that exists in Santa Fe is really much more of a branch conflict between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And I think that creates some opportunities and challenges for us, for the city of Albuquerque, that we need to be mindful of. I guess first and foremost, looking at it from a substantive bill legislative perspective, the governor has sent guidance down that she's going to be very, very careful about the substantive bills that she's going to message. I think in the end, they will end up messaging some bills, but we won't know until the very end. So when you look at all the work that we've been doing in the interim as it relates to crime package stuff, much of which has been picked up by the House Democrats, there's going to be a waiting game on how that legislation is going to be, what the governor will sign off on. So that's one thing that's a challenge and an opportunity. Then we're going to have to be getting all these bills drafted. So we have work to do there. They changed the rules recently as it relates to capital outlay. Last year, of course, they created these new transparency rules. So all capital outlay, where a member sends their money, people know. That's it's different than it's been. And so that transparency from a public policy standpoint is probably really good. But from getting folks to spend money outside of their districts is pretty bad. So I think that for the city of Albuquerque is a bonus, because my compliments to the mayor's office and to our city council for, I think, really raising their game in the last 2 years on capital outlay. I think we've gone to the legislature with great projects that are defensible. They're also worthwhile. And that's why we've done so well. Imagine how hard it's going to be for some of these other entities who are trying to get legislators to spend money outside of their districts. So there's an opportunity there, but that's going to require us to be mindful and thoughtful about the projects that we pick. And I know from my conversations with the mayor's office and with Mr. Menicucci and the team that everybody's thinking that way. So I'm extremely optimistic about that. Beyond that, Madam Chair, I think we're in the situation now where we have to be flexible and responsive to the opportunities as they come, because we're not sure exactly how things are going to work out between these conversations that are happening well above our head as it relates to the governor's office and the legislative leadership. I feel like in the remaining time, in the remainder of the interim, there's still opportunities for us with some key committees, maybe to surface some of our more prominent ideas, perhaps even seeking some legislative endorsements from committees. I think that's appropriate. I think there's still plenty of time for us to be setting up individual meetings at the direction of the mayor's office or the city council with certain legislators. In the past, we've done pretty well having targeted sort of clustered meetings. And once we go offline, I'll visit with Mr. Menicucci and the mayor's office staff about things we might be doing to make sure we're putting our best foot forward. There is an incomprehensible amount of money, as you know. And so even if they keep quite a bit of it in, hold it back in reserves, there's going to be a lot of effort to try and get money. And I think that also fits in our advantage. I said earlier, I didn't think things were partisan, and I don't believe they are. Now the battle more gets into progressive Democrats versus conservative Democrats on what you do with some of those surpluses and whether you spend that money on, let's say, recurring obligations or non-recurring obligations. And so I think the challenge for us in the city of Albuquerque is, how do we fit into that debate And of course, I'm not a policymaker. I will do whatever I'm told by the leadership, but I think we have to be prepared to make the case for whatever it is that you all decide. And so I hope you can tell I'm extremely excited for this session because there's plenty of opportunity for us to do well. And I think the work that the mayor's office has done during the interim on the crime stuff is going to pay off. And I think that we're in a great position to do our very best.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions for Mr. Thompson?
Madam Chair, just maybe some commentary.
Sure. Yes, Councilor Pena.
So I just want to say, you know, I kind of missed, I was having some reception issues because I was driving from somewhere. But anyway, I didn't catch the whole federal stuff, but just on the state legislative stuff, I just wanted to mention that, you know, with all due credit to Senator Sandaroo, who had been pushing that transparency bill for so many years to get passed, it was kind of unfortunate that now that he wasn't in office that it actually passed, but he really worked hard over the years to get that passed. And that's something from the community level that we had advocated for so many years, because especially in some underserved neighborhoods, you know, oftentimes the money would leave the district and we couldn't figure out why we weren't getting some of the resources needed. So I just want to say I'm glad about that. I think it is a win-win for our city, and I'm just looking forward to the session and how we put our priorities forward, because I think it's a real opportunity, not just for capital, but policy-wise, as you stated. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. And yes, we keep track of all our capital projects and our balances versus what's in CPMS, and that the difference has narrowed over the course of the year, so that our that site is now almost in real time to give that level of transparency that Councilor Pena referenced. So that's really good news. Any other questions or comments on state? Okay, and then maybe Mr. Minicucci, if you could remind us, when do we start sending our stuff to you for the state priorities bill, and when do we want to, will we do that in our next meeting? Sorry, sir, you're on mute. I know we're looking at the draft bill today, but in terms of the list.
The list. So yes. So at the last meeting, you had asked that we begin assembling the list. So we have been working with the counselors. Some of them have already provided it. Some of them, because it's fairly early, have told us they'll be getting it together in the next couple of weeks. And a few, I think, are quite not ready. So we're on our part. And I talked with Isaac earlier in the week. We talked with Isaac, and he said that you all, from the city, for the citywide projects, you all are busy assembling that. So I think today, if the drafts look good, then we're ready to start it. We have some projects we'll start putting in, and we'll just start accepting projects and kind of encouraging everybody to get them in as fast as possible. If there's still more work, then we'll probably have to have probably another IGR meeting. But as far as assembling the projects, we are in that process and just pushing them forward.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. So, you know, I think Mr. Thompson, in terms of these meetings and stuff, that gives you a little sense of our time frame. All right, well, if there's nothing else for our state folks, of course, you're always welcome to stay. And actually, you might want to, because there's so much interesting stuff happening at the federal level, but you're also free to move on with your day if you'd like to. Thank you very much for your updates. And we'll hear next on the federal 117th Congress report and update from John O'Donnell and your team. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I'm going to talk about the big picture of where we are in Washington right now with items that will affect the city directly. Also, where we are with the FY22 appropriations process. And then, as was just mentioned, the question that was raised by the chairwoman about the federal program and its development, and some thoughts about that. So let me start with the big issues. I like to say that sitting here, it's like looking at the Amtrak tracks coming into Union Station. We've got 4 trains on 4 different tracks. We've got the FY22 appropriations bills. We have the reconciliation package, which is also named the Build Back Better proposal. And then we have the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, which was known previously as the Senate Bipartisan Infrastructure Package. And then finally, we have the debt limit. So on the appropriations, where we stand right now is all of the House committees have reported their bills out of committee. And on the Senate side, we have 3 subcommittees that have reported their bills: Agriculture, Energy and Water Development, and the third one is Military Construction, which happens to be chaired by Senator Heinrich. We have a continuing resolution to keep the government funded through December 3rd. That will probably have to be extended. They'll probably have to pass another short-term CR. And as Senator Stabenow from Michigan said this morning or last evening about the reconciliation package and appropriations, she said that nothing drives finality to those processes like the Christmas holidays. So you have the first statement, public statement of an elected official on Capitol Hill saying all of these matters, these 4 trains that I spoke about coming onto one track, happening probably before Christmas. But that Christmas holiday season, as you're well aware, often drives congressional action to close out the year. The other big issue is the reconciliation package, also known as Build Back Better. It started out earlier this year as a $6 trillion item. It went to 3.5, and it's now somewhere between 1.5 and maybe 2.2 trillion. And as you've heard a lot in the press, Senators Sinema from Arizona and Manchin from West Virginia are having a big impact on what that final number is going to be. Because of Senator Manchin's state of West Virginia, it is probably not going to do the things in climate change that many of the progressives want done. One of the programs that was in that package originally was a piece that would actually provide incentives to electric utilities to diversify their source of power energy into alternative sources and away from fossil fuels. That appears to be a real non-starter with Manchin in his discussions with the White House. And so the Senate Finance Committee is looking at some other options as alternatives for incentives for alternative energy as a way to address some of the climate change concerns. Senator Sinema has not been quite as forthcoming in terms of the things that she wants or doesn't want in the bill. She's just said that the number is too big. So we're not quite sure where she's at on this. Congresswoman Speaker Pelosi has made it clear that family, health, and climate issues are her priorities in whatever reconciliation package is put together. The House progressives, which are having a big impact on where these negotiations are going, seem to be willing to reduce the amount of time that some of these provisions would be in effect as a trade-off for less money being in the final reconciliation package. And President Biden has spent, at least by public accounts, has spent quite a bit of time in the past 2 weeks and continuing today, meeting with Senators Manchin, Sinema, and the progressives at the White House. He's also been to the Hill several times. In fact, the whip in the Senate, Senator Durbin, has said that Sinema and Manchin have been to the White House so much that on the West Wing, there are now 2 permanent parking spaces allotted for the 2 senators. The big risk here for the president, is he has to strike a deal. And I think he has to strike a deal because on the reconciliation, because it's been such a big part of this legislative package that he's been pushing since January. And I think there is beginning to be some concern across the Democrats on the Hill, House and Senate, that they need to reach an agreement. They don't necessarily have to have the legislation, but they need to reach an agreement soon. Whether they can do that by the end of the month, which was what Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer, the leader in the Senate, said they wanted, it's not clear that they're going to be able to get there by the end of the month. But I think the effort that's going into these negotiations by the White House is certainly a signal that the president wants to get the outline of an agreement together, because it's going to take, going back to the 4 trains coming into Union Station, it's going to take until early December to probably get the legislative language tweaked that will be used to pass the reconciliation legislation. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the bipartisan Senate infrastructure bill. As you've heard, the House wanted to have, and Speaker Pelosi told her Democratic colleagues that they would have a vote on this by the end of October. That's not going to happen because the progressives really want this reconciliation package to be voted on in the Senate before they act on the infrastructure proposal on the House side. And the House members want a reconciliation package they can support. So this is going to hold up the infrastructure bill, but I'm confident, having watched this legislative dance for a number of years, that all of this is going to get done by Christmas. And as usual, it won't be pretty, it won't be streamlined, but it will get done, and we will have that Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. You've got Republicans in both the House and the Senate who support that legislation and want to see it passed. So I think there's, on all 3 of these things, appropriations, reconciliation, infrastructure, we're going to see that before Christmas. And the debt limit is tied to all of this in the sense that when they passed the short-term extension to keep the government funded and borrowing, they didn't give a specific date, but they said it was around December 3rd when they needed to have another vote on that. They'll get that vote. There'll be a lot of public posturing by all sides and all interests on that. It'll get done. I sent out, are there any questions on these 4 items before I talk briefly about the city's appropriations requests?
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions on that portion? All right, sir, keep going. Thanks.
Okay, so timely for this committee meeting, yesterday, the Senate Chairman Patrick Leahy from Vermont, while they haven't marked up the 9 other bills in the appropriations package on the Senate side, they did release the bills. So we saw some earmarked money in the various bills for the city of Albuquerque. So the victims intervention program, trauma recovery, Congresswoman Stansberry included $1 million in the House bill for that. Senator Heinrich and Senator Lujan included $494,000. So both senators had the same earmark amount. For the ECHO program, both senators included, and was in the bill, for $435,000. The gunshot detection project, Senator Heinrich has what we asked for, which was $1.4 million. It's actually 1,471,000. And Senator Lujan had an earmark in request of 352,000. I would say when you look at those two numbers, because Senator Heinrich is on the Appropriations Committee, I'm pretty confident that we'll see that $1.4 million. On Daniel Webster Park, both senators included $750,000 for it. Congressman Stansberry had included 500,000. It'll be interesting to see. A lot of times in numbers like this between the House and the Senate, when they get to conference, they split the difference. Again, because Senator Heinrich is on appropriations, it's likely that we might see that higher number. And I know in conversations with Senator Heinrich's staff, I think their original request was around $1 million for that project. I know they talked about that with the Parks and Recreation Department, but it is 750,000. So there were 8 earmark requests by the city. Half of them received funding. They came primarily from two subcommittees, Commerce, Justice, Science, and the other one was Transportation and HUD. And they were across 3 federal program accounts. 2 of them were from the COPS technology. One was from the Burn, bless you, from the Burn Justice Assistance Grant. And the third was the Economic Development Initiative out of Transportation and HUD. So that's where we stand at present with the earmarks that were requested this year. I mentioned at the start that we are beginning to talk with and have talked with Isaac and Tom about a federal workshop in terms of preparing for the next year's federal program. And towards that, we have developed a PowerPoint presentation that we are going to be sending to the city that outlines what we propose to be the structure of that workshop for department staff and city council staff in terms of developing the program. And that's across all areas like legislation, policy, and earmarks. And to support and follow up to that, we plan to be in Albuquerque on December 8th, 9th, and 10th to visit with the city about follow-up to the workshop and making more refinements to the federal program as it stands at that point for next year. And would hope to be able to visit with the mayor's office, city council, and departments and talk about specifics for the program next year. Madam Chairman, that's concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions, comments? Okay. Well, maybe we can think about having an in-person meeting when you're in town.
That would be great.
If folks are up for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, well, our last item on the agenda today is reviewing the draft federal and state priority resolutions and attachment sheet format. And I know Mr. Minicucci had distributed that in advance. Did everyone get that in their email? Okay, great. All right, Mr. Minicucci, do you want to walk us through it?
Sure. So basically, Madam Chair and councilors or members of the committee, the drafts for this year for the resolution actually stay consistent with the drafts from previous years. The language changes a little bit, the format's the same. I think we took out some of the language regarding the COVID issues that were in last year's. And then we put in here just some language that reflects what you all have been working on regarding health, economic opportunity, shelter and food security, infrastructure, and robust economic development. but it primarily uses the same whereas as it explain the importance between the city, what the city does and what it does, and how the city and the state or the city and federal government, their services impact the lives of our citizens and how they work together and how they kind of need each other, I think, to summarize the whereases. And then the other ones just go forward and say section 1. We kind of encourage you to support these policies. And then we mentioned that in our attachments, the projects or policies related to, such as the policies of infrastructure, so on and so on, are in attachment 1. And in attachment 2, we kind of mentioned that in section 2 that we also, and this for both kind of state and federal a little bit, that in attachment 2, we go and we offer the district projects. We're calling them a little bit of a change this year. We're kind of, where I think we're saying district projects that benefit neighborhoods, understanding that the state legislature has some understanding what that means, knowing that they're familiar with our city council districts. In the federal resolution, we just kind of use the word neighborhood projects, not knowing if the congressional delegation, if they feel is comfortable with the use of district, not knowing that or not. So that's basically our resolutions. And there's also always an attachment 3 that kind of does mention our programs and policies that we would like to go forward, or laws we'd like to see. And I should back up. Attachment 1 usually takes a look at kind of the larger projects. That's for the second of them. Where we've made the changes is that this year, we know that always every year the council or the committee, the IGR committee, is usually trying to always improve the attachments. They feel like that's something we can always work on. So myself and Jeff Hertz sat down, and again, we offer 2 sets of attachments. One, the format the IGR has developed over the last 3 or 4 years, we offer. And the other one too is we offer more of a spreadsheet. And I should point out to you that the spreadsheet idea is you'll see a whole number of columns. So it gives much more in-depth information. Not that this information would go to the legislature. The legislator, what we might do is kind of depend on what the committee feels comfortable sending the legislature in the spreadsheet. Then we could hide those columns, save the spreadsheet as a PDF, and give that to the legislators or to the congressional delegation. At the same time, the members of this committee and the councilors would have access to the mayor's administration would have access to the full spreadsheet along with our state and city law, our federal lobbyists. So that's primarily it. And so we wanted to bring it to the committee today and kind of see exactly how you'd like to proceed. Is the resolution as we provided, does that work for you, or do you want us to go back and make more changes? And again, the 2 different attachments, do either of them work for you, or would you like to? We could always develop a third option, though. Probably need some strong input on you on how that would look like.
Thank you. So just for discussion purposes, why don't we take these one at a time, and let's start with the discussion draft state priorities resolution. Do folks have that in front of them, or do we need to pull it up on the share screen?
So I believe Jillian was able to do that. Or okay. Jillian, thank you.
No problem. So it'll be discussion draft state priorities resolution 2022. Is that
yes.
The document? Okay.
Yes, sir. And again, I don't think we need to vote on this. I think we just need to give the green light on the format so that these folks can continue to work on it. Great. That's the same one I have in front of me. So, Mr. Minicucci kind of walked us through it, but I didn't have any. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about this format? Okay. Just give folks another minute or 2 to read it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilor Bassan.
Thank you. So, Mr. Minicucci, I don't have the attachments yet or the latest edition of those, correct?
The latest attachment, we did send you the samples in the last.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's the one that we're supposed to be looking at as far as the attachments that go along with it. Yeah,
we haven't filled them out yet because we hadn't gotten all the projects back yet. So we felt that we'd probably give you, we just wanted to work on the format first. We knew which format to put all the projects into.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no concerns about this format, then I think the team can keep going with this one. And then we have format. The next one I have on my sort of list of attachments here is format 1 sample attachment. If you want to maybe open that up, Mr. Moya.
Madam Chair, I see one policy and legislative requests. Or
Yes.
citywide regional, okay.
Yes, sir.
Or actually, Julian, if you go with citywide regional, that might give a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
My apologies, Madam Chair.
Citywide and regional, got it. Okay.
So
Great.
again, as you can see, Madam Chair, this is just simply the format has been used the last couple of years.
Right. Okay. All right. Looks like everyone seems okay with that. Any questions or concerns about that format? Okay, great. And then I think the other attachments are sort of in the same format. I don't think we need to quite go through each one. So the next thing would be format 2, sample attachment 1, state FY22. If we want to look at the city and legislative neighborhood priorities, that's the Excel version. And while we pull that up, I will note that I just liked the idea of sort of having all of this information, agreeing with Mr. Minicucci that what we share and what goes in what packet is a different question, but especially liked the part about the current funding being in there so that we can see where we're just asking to make projects whole or top them off, or are we really just starting from zero? So why don't folks take a look at that and see if there are any comments or concerns on that one?
And Madam Chair, if I can make one comment, the idea of hiding the columns isn't to try to hide information from the legislators. It's more just trying to strike that balance between they want accurate information, but at the same time, the legislators and the Congress people have so much information coming at them every hour of the day. We're trying to not overload them, but get them the right information they need.
Yeah. Totally agreed, Mr. Minicucci, just making it simple for everyone to use, but also making sure we have everything in the same place. Any concerns about that? Okay. And then the next, so that would take care of all the state forms, is that right?
Yes, and so what we would be asking is that we can do 2 options. One, do you want to just use one of these formats? Or we could do the first format, the old format, and that's what goes to state legislators. The second format would just be a database that the city could access, and as they need to, they could hand individually to a legislator. So I mean, whether you wanted to choose one or other format, again, it was a little confusing. The bill would have an attachment, and one of the formats would be what we would attach. The other one would just be a spreadsheet that you would have available. Or if you want to take and just adopt, like for instance, spreadsheet, not use the old format from previous years and make this spreadsheet your format. So I mean, kind of I know it's a number of options, but we're trying to get a best working method as we can.
Any thoughts on that from any folks on the committee here? And I will go ahead, Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you clarify that one more time, Mr. Minicucci?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, so you want us to hopefully pick from this list what we prefer the appearance to be for being able to submit this to the state legislators.
So yeah, I think it's 2 ways. I apologize, members of the committee. So one would be to pick one of the 2, and that would be the attachment that goes with the resolution. Or B, you could also just pick the old format, continue that as the attachment. That's be the sample 1, the first sample, format 1, and then have format 2 as kind of a backup spreadsheet that everybody have access to, that they could, as legislator or requested or a congressional delegation, we could hand to them individually. So I think, we just want to kind of keep that option available. If you feel like both formats have their strengths and you don't want to just choose one, that's an option we can go. Or if you feel like one has much better strength, then we could just choose one to put as the enactment. I hope that doesn't confuse it too much, but.
Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think, Tom, over the years, we've kind of redone this. And what we were doing initially was we were actually putting everything in the resolution, which got pretty convoluted, and priorities and non-priorities. So what we did is we kind of condensed the resolution just to kind of give the gist of what we're trying to do. And then we added the list of attachment with what our priorities were. And then now Tom is adding this other layer, which I think is important, Tom. So I appreciate all the work, but I think that we just go with the resolution, the attached priorities, and then it's an internal document that we can share with legislators, or if they ask for more information about how much extra dollars that we have, then we can show them that we've already invested and in prior years of securing money. But it just gets a little tough when some of the money is that we don't have complete accurate numbers all the time. So I think it just really putting something down that's saying this is what we actually have is a little misleading. So I would say go with the resolution, the attached priority list, and then we use that as an internal, external document as needed.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. That's sort of where my head was going as well, because that spreadsheet may change over time, and we want to keep the version that's ultimately adopted by council to not change. So having format 1 as the attachment to the resolution and then keeping the spreadsheet as a living document makes sense to me. I guess I would just say any objections to that, or shall we move forward in that way?
And Madam Chair, I would just add that using that format, then what the staff can also do is we can also take that second document, second format, and continue to build on it as we get as information and appropriations come in. So it becomes that master document we usually get out to you about 2 months after the legislative session every year. I think that would then become the basis for that master document.
That sounds great. Any other questions or comments before we move on to the federal forms? Okay, seeing none, the next document we would open then, Mr. Moya, is the discussion draft 2022 federal priorities resolution. Thank you. And we'll give folks a chance to look at it if you haven't yet.
And Madam Chair, I don't know, Mr. O'Donnell added to it. So this is a document that was updated, kind of improved by Mr. O'Donnell. I don't know if you want to ask him if he has any comments on it or anything.
Okay, so any comments or questions, Councilor Pena?
No, I think I just didn't know if you had froze or if I had froze. I've been having some internet issues, but I guess I will preface this just because we have new committee members here. I'm not, not brand new, but just to say that the way we were writing our federal priorities a few years back was we were using it with the, what is it called, John O'Donnell? I'm trying to think of the capital, the way we used to use it for just earmarks, sorry. So the way we were writing it before was just with earmarks, and kind of worked really hard over the years to kind of change the resolution to not be included for earmarks, but the way we're getting federal dollars was through grants. So we worked really hard to change that and to condense this as well, because we were turning over kind of a book. And so we condensed it, we changed it over to the grant process. And then now it's kind of changed back to grants and earmarks. So the resolution now is condensed. Thanks, John Karaoke, for making it a better document as well. And so now what we have in there is kind of the evolution of both and how this looks moving forward. I think the way it's written now maybe could use a couple more changes, but it looks really good.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. Yeah, I like the way that you've sort of woven the earmarks back in. So if there are no other comments or questions, just from glancing over it, it looks like the attachments then are very similar to the ones we looked at for the state bills. There's the simple format that we could attach to the resolution, and then the more living spreadsheets that we could use to keep track of things as they evolve. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, I think we can ask the team to move forward with these documents. All right. Well, thank you very much to everyone, Mr. Minicucci and your team and everybody who worked on this. They look great. I think it's also great that we just take a pause and from having been in just a couple of those meetings where we hashed through all these different ways of doing it. I think it was good to get our sort of pre-approval of these and they look good. Are there any other items of business for this committee? Yes.
Madam Chair, just one item. As Mr. Donald said, that he will be putting together a seminar to begin training our personnel on the how to proceed with the, I guess they're called Senate community projects or the earmarks or the congressional community projects. Just so you know, we can know you all are busy up there. We can assemble the Zoom meeting and put together when the meeting is and all that. But if we could reach out to you, I think Isaac and Libby, if you all could kind of determine who do you want at the meeting and kind of figure out which people you would like there, who in the departments you want to invite, how many people you want to invite on that one there, then we can just take that information and kind of get it out. We can at least get the administrative part done for you. If that would work for you all.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. I see nods from Libby and Isaac, so I think that's a yes. If there's no other business for this committee, then we will adjourn. Thank you all. Have a great couple of weeks. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.